All right, everyone. So we have a brand new video here from Swagkage, or it was new. I think it's been at least a week now since he's released this video. Last time I checked, and this is a video about a topic that's been discussed multiple times in the Naruto fandom, and we're gonna go ahead and watch it. And I'm interested to see what Swag's thoughts are on this video. I can't remember if he has already talked about this before. I can't really remember if he's mentioned it in other videos, but this is his first video where he's specifically talking about this topic in particular. So we're gonna go ahead and watch this video, and I'm going to, of course, give my comments as we watch this. And I'm gonna go ahead and leave a link to the original video in the description, as well as a link to Swag's channel. And obviously, do that with every single video that we react to here, and not just video, but even some of the shows that we watch here on this channel. I'll leave a link to the original source, or at least a link to where you can find it, so you can go check it out for yourself. And all right, so let's just go ahead and jump right into it. So this is a 48-minute video, so I don't know how long this reaction is going to be, but just based on my previous videos and how much I tend to go on this, there's a chance this video could be way over an hour long. So we're gonna go ahead and watch it, and I'll try at least to keep my comments to a minimum. That way I keep the video from being way too long. Anyway, yeah, let's just go ahead and watch it, and I'm curious to hear what his thoughts are on this topic about Naruto being the underdog, because you have obviously both sides of the argument. You have one side saying that Naruto was not an underdog. You have one side saying that Naruto was the underdog. So yeah, that whole discussion, I think, is just going to possibly keep going for a long time after this. I don't really expect that discussion to stop, because a lot of people are, firm in their beliefs one way or the other, or, whatever side that they're on, whether he is or isn't. It's just, I feel like for a lot of people, it's just not going to change. But you know what? Hey, I mean, everyone's entitled to their opinion. We're going to go ahead and we'll watch Swag's opinion right here. And, throughout the video, I'll give my thoughts, because I think that I have maybe mentioned this a couple of times in previous videos. But yeah, let's just go ahead and watch.
So if you've been around the block once or twice, you've probably at least caught a whiff of the discourse I'll be exploring in this video. A critique often levied at Naruto, both the character and the series, is that they exist at odds with one of the things they're meant to represent. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that the series started as an underdog story with a compelling message about how hard work is more valuable than natural talent, until it undid all this by retroactively turning its main character into not just a prodigy, but the chosen one. Something else you'll often...
Yeah, I will say this, it definitely didn't help the conversation. And, I think I have said this before, but I personally am not a fan of the decision that Kishimoto made to make Naruto and Sasuke the reincarnations of Indra and Ashura. I just personally am not a big fan of that decision. I personally would have liked it if Naruto, would have been essentially just compared to Ashura. Like Hagoromo just said, hey, you actually, you're actually a lot like, my youngest son, and that he, didn't really inherit a lot of the natural, abilities that, that I originally had. My brother or my oldest Indra did get them, but Ashura didn't. But he still, worked hard, and he got to a place where he was strong, and eventually, I picked him as a successor, and so on and so forth. I personally think that probably would have been the better decision, because this definitely did, fuel the conversation even more about Naruto being not really, an underdog. And personally for me, I'm still not a big fan of that decision. Again, I would have much preferred if he just been compared to him, saying, hey, you two are very similar. And that's just it. That's where the similarities stop. Like, not that you're the literal reincarnation of my son. I think that was a mistake.
often hear following this talking point is that Rock Lee should have been the main character instead, since he's a better vehicle for the message of the value of hard work than Naruto is.
Have said.
Now, as the title should have already told you, I don't agree with this at all. I think that people who talk about the series like this are missing the point. Naruto is supposed to be an underdog, but he was never meant to be completely helpless or something. The story was never ever about someone without any gifts proving that they're as good as people more talented than they are. It does stress the importance of hard work and grit, but it never tries to present these things and natural talent as being mutually exclusive. The characters in this setting don't exist in some sort of this or that dichotomy where they either have gifts or they don't. Again, it's not a story about succeeding in spite of being talentless in a world full of gifted people. It's actually about having enough faith in yourself and staying determined enough to find what your gifts are. Let's, as an example, use the Rock Lee thing I brought up earlier to explore this point further. Like Naruto,
Here's the thing. I actually do agree with the point that he brought up right here, and that is something that I do wish more people would talk about when it comes to when it comes to the Naruto series. That one thing that it does highlight is that everyone is talented at something. It's just that they sometimes need specific people to help, bring that out of them. It's just that a lot of people can unfortunately go their entire lives without ever finding out what it is that they happen to be really good at. And it sucks because they could be good at something that could really be really, really useful and something that could really help, the world. But because they never met the right person to help bring that out of them, it just goes completely unnoticed. And that's something that the Naruto series actually does touch upon. And I do wish more people would kind of talk about that. And he even Rock Lee is definitely one of them. So I'll let him continue.
Rock Lee doesn't show very much promise when he begins his career as a ninja. He's clearly supposed to be an underdog too, but unlike Naruto, he has some kind of disability that completely prevents him from using ninjutsu or genjutsu. He has things pretty bad. But something that always gets left out of this discussion, something I'll add that's very important, is that in the same fight where it's revealed that Lee has this handicap, Kakashi says that for him to be able to open up 3 of the 8 gates, he must be a genius, as it's not something anyone can do just by trying hard enough. There's no ambiguity here. He blatantly says Lee is gifted, and then just to make sure there's no confusion, explains that this is exactly what he meant. I'd also like to add that after Kakashi said this, Lee opened 2 more of the gates. So we can pretty safely say that Lee's past the point of being an ordinary genius and is actually pretty exceptional even when compared to other gifted ninja. This feels like a smoking gun argument to me. There really is no reason to introduce a character like Lee, who is so obviously meant to be an underdog, who clearly blatantly has to work harder than everyone else if he wants to be able to keep up with them, then immediately say that he's actually really talented, unless of course the series is trying to say exactly what I said it is. Everyone in this setting can do something that most people can't, or is better at something than most people are. That's why an experienced super genius like Kakashi can only open 1 of the gates, and a supposedly good-for-nothing failure of a kid whose ninja career basically just started can open 5. The idea with Lee is that his gifts were less obvious and more difficult to tap into than most people's are. So to a lot of people, they might have seemed outright non-existent, and everyone told Lee this, that he wasn't good enough and shouldn't bother trying.
Again, this is something that, again, I really do wish more people would talk about this, because I don't think it's talked about enough, where it does point out that, because you're not, sometimes people, because they're told they're not good at specific things, that means that they're just completely useless. When in reality, that's not the case. Okay, you may not be good at this, but you're really good at this other thing. Whereas the people who are good at the things that you're not good at are actually pretty shit when it comes to the thing that you happen to be very good at. You know what I mean? This is, again, this is something that he brings up. Lee, from such a young age, can open 5 of the hidden gates. And yet Kakashi, a guy who has decades of experience under his belt, can only open 1. Think about that.
But he believed he was good enough. Do I have what it takes to be a great ninja wasn't a question Lee asked himself. It wasn't a matter of if to Lee, but a matter of how. He worked backwards from the conclusion that he could work within the scope of his own limitations and still find something that makes him exceptional, and it's this kind of unwavering determination that the series is trying to preach about. Naruto, the character, exemplifies this pretty well. Now, I'm probably gonna piss a bunch of people off by saying this, but I think that at the start of the series, Naruto's in an even worse position than Lee would have been in when he graduated from the academy.
Really?
Like Lee, he couldn't use genjutsu, was bad at taijutsu, and sucked at throwing shuriken. The one and only advantage he had over Lee was that he could use a ninjutsu, a single one, and it was the sexy jutsu, which is basically the same as not having any ninjutsu at all.
Yeah,
effectively, they were in the same position. Now, before anyone tries to say how Lee...
I will say this, when it comes to that jutsu, it highly depends on when he uses it, or when he uses, excuse me. Because if you remember in the first chapter, that's the ability he used to get the scroll, which had the Shadow Clone Jutsu in it. So I wouldn't say it's completely useless, even though it is treated like a joke. It's a joke ability. It's just used for gags. But that doesn't mean it's completely useless, as we, see presented to us in the series.
He actually had it worse because he was straight up incapable of using ninjutsu and genjutsu. First of all, it really doesn't matter because it's not like Naruto wasn't trying. He was doing his best to learn all the ninjutsu the Academy was trying to teach him, and it just wasn't working, so it's essentially the same thing. I'll go a step further than saying that it's just the same though. Let me actually explain how this is an advantage for Lee. As far as genjutsu goes, Naruto just can't do it. In the entire 700 chapter run of the manga, he never uses a single genjutsu ever, not once the whole entire.
And by the way, that doesn't change even in, at least from as far as I'm aware, that doesn't change even into the Boruto era. Like Naruto still can't use genjutsu from what I understand, which is kind of crazy because you would think that when he was given access to Hagoromo's, chakra, which gave him the understanding of all things chakra, which is what allowed him to sort of, recreate Kakashi's eye. You would think that then he would gain at least some understanding of, genjutsu, but seems like apparently that's still not the case. Like Naruto still is not good at using genjutsu.
Time. And with ninjutsu, Naruto had a reason beyond his own control that stopped him from being able to use the kinds of ninjutsu the Academy was trying to teach him, that being the Nine Tails. We'll talk more about this later, but even though everyone likes to pretend the Nine Tails was this invaluable asset to Naruto that made his life super easy or something, it caused a lot of problems for him. And in this case,
here's the thing. That's definitely something that I think does get I just think that that's just, completely incorrect. Yes, having the Nine Tails did obviously give him a lot of advantages. That is definitely not up for debate. Like you can't say him having the Nine Tails didn't give him some advantages. I mean, it literally saved his life so many times. And that's something that even Naruto acknowledges in Boruto in the events after the Ishiki fight, at least in the anime. It wasn't, from what I remember, it wasn't actually mentioned in the manga, but in the anime where they had this scene where Naruto and Sasuke were in the hospital and they were getting checked, and obviously confirming that because Naruto lost Kurama and Sasuke lost the Rinnegan, they both obviously lost a lot of power. And Naruto himself even acknowledges that having Kurama basically saved my life so many times through so many times throughout his life, that even he himself, that it did kind of feel like he was kind of cheating a little bit. And yeah, so having Kurama absolutely gave him advantages. It's just that it also came with a lot of problems. And that's something that I think a lot of people ignore or they forget when they either watched or read the manga, is that having Kurama in him definitely caused a lot of problems. Number one being that everybody in the village hated him for something that he literally had nothing to do with. Didn't choose to become the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, didn't choose to, essentially be a weapon for the Leaf Village. He didn't choose any of that. It was forced on him, and everybody hated him because he had, the Biju that basically caused a lot of destruction, that killed a lot of people. Even though, as we find out, it wasn't even Kurama's fault. He was forced to do that by Obito. So yeah, I mean, again, in a way, that's something that Naruto and Kurama sort of have in common, where both of them were basically kind of forced to be something that they never planned on being, which is a weapon by, shinobi. Again, just kind of really interesting. But yeah, again, like that's something that, again, I feel like a lot of people keep forgetting, because I think most people just remember Naruto just being like, super god shinobi, where he's just flying around, bombing everything with Rasengans and everything, blowing up mountaintops and, creating holes in people with his multiple different types of Rasengans. And they just keep forgetting how many problems he had because of Kurama.
It messed with his chakra control to such an extent that he basically couldn't use any of the ninjutsu he was being taught.
That's something else people forget about.
And unlike Lee, he couldn't afford to go all in on taijutsu because he needed to be able to perform ninjutsu to graduate. So Naruto had to waste a bunch of time and effort trying to develop skills he wasn't suited for to please a curriculum that was actively hostile to him, while for whatever reason, Lee was able to graduate solely based off of his merit as a taijutsu user. There's also the whole Nine Tails thing that made practically everyone in...
I will say this, that is something that did that does kind of confuse me. It's like, how the hell did Lee pass if he literally can't use ninjutsu or genjutsu? And yet Naruto wasn't allowed to pass because he needed to know he needed to show that he could use ninjutsu and genjutsu. Or maybe not, not genjutsu, but he needed to show that he could use ninjutsu. So how the hell did Lee pass? I mean, unless the only thing that I can think of is maybe Guy possibly put in a good word for him because he recognized just how good he was at, putting so much effort into mastering his taijutsu that, I don't know, he went up to them and was like, look, I know this kid can't use ninjutsu, but just let me vouch for him, okay? If you help him graduate, and I will take him under my wing, and listen, I can make this kid into something. That's just what I'm kind of guessing. Either that or it's just a plot hole. I don't know. I feel like that's probably just a plot hole on Kishimoto's part.
The entire village hostile to Naruto, as well as the fact that he didn't have any parents to help guide him through the learning process. These are also obstacles Lee never had to face, and they aren't minor. Having no parents or mentors to seek help from meant that until he enrolled in the academy, Naruto had to figure everything out on his own. And again, we can see that he tried. We see flashbacks of him training in a room littered with books and scrolls, stuff that he likely sought out on his own by going to the village library or whatever. While we do see him sleeping in class from time to time, it's pretty unfair to Naruto to attribute this to laziness rather than, all the other stuff it could be. Like him spreading himself thin day after day training, exhausting himself trying to master jutsu and skills that he can't intuitively learn because he's either not talented enough or because he's carrying a demon inside of him that makes it impossible for him to use chakra normally, or it could be that he's unhealthy because of his diet, something that he as a 12-year-old boy really can't be held accountable for since he has no one to tell him he should be eating better. Could have been a lot.
That's actually true, and this is something that always did kind of just confuse me. It's like, why the hell didn't Hiruzen at least send someone to watch over him? I mean, I understand that a lot of the village hated him because, again, he was, the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, but at the same time, it's like, if the Hokage gives you an order, you're going to follow it. If he tells you, I need to watch over him, or I need you to watch over him, and I need you to make sure that he's, eating properly, that he's, I don't know, that he's actually well taken care of. I mean, that's basically what he promised Kushina before she died, and he just left him alone. Fucking dick.
Lot of different things. The fact that he enrolled in the academy at all, that he clearly went to the village library to read more about chakra and the fundamental skills he'd need to acquire to become a ninja when we know for a fact no one was there to offer him any guidance at all, is proof that he was trying in spite of the deck being stacked against him. And on top of all that, unlike Lee, Naruto wasn't content with just being an accomplished ninja. He was aiming for Hokage. In practically every respect, he was fighting an equally steep, if not steeper, uphill battle than Lee was. That's enough of the Rock Lee comparisons, at least for now. I want to move on to some other stuff. In particular, Naruto's privilege, or supposed privilege anyway. All of the advantages he's perceived to have. There are 4 big ones: the Nine Tails, his teachers, his parents, and the whole reincarnation business. Let's go over each of them one at a time. Let's start with his status as Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tailed Fox. This is not as much of an asset as everyone likes to pretend that it is. Like I already said earlier, this thing kept Naruto from having any mentors for the first 12 years of his life, and also made it impossible for him to control his chakra with any kind of finesse. It gave him a healing factor, which comes up like twice pre-time skip, and a lot of extra chakra to work with, but only once he trained to take advantage of it. Even the multi-shadow clone jutsu, the main way he takes advantage of his large chakra supply, is something he's able to use without any help from the Nine Tails. Now, before anybody says it, yeah, I know the Fox has helped Naruto out plenty of times on its own, with no input from Naruto whatsoever. I'll admit now that these aren't examples of him benefiting from the fruits of his training or anything. They're Naruto capitalizing on an advantage no one else has. But let's actually go over all the times where this happens. Off the top of my head, Naruto gets help from the Nine Tails in some way against Haku, Orochimaru, Neji, Gaara, Kimimaro, Sasuke, Deidara, Orochimaru again, Kakazu, I guess, Pain, and then after that, he gains control of the Nine Tails and uses its chakra in most of his fights going forward. One thing you may have already noticed if you're as familiar with the series as I am is that in all of the examples I just gave from before the time skip, Naruto either didn't win the fight or he was using the Nine Tails chakra intentionally after training specifically to develop the ability to tap into it. Before Shippuden, Neji and Gaara are the only
Okay, so that actually is true, and that's something that, again, I think a lot of people don't mention, is that Naruto didn't win most of the fights that he was in throughout the entire series. Like, he won a couple, but he actually lost more fights than he won. That's something that I think a lot of people don't bring up when it comes to Naruto, is that even when he had the Nine Tails' help, he still ended up losing. Well, actually, he lost, again, most of them. He no he in part one he did win the fight against Neji. The Nine Tails of Chakra did help. He let's see in the fight against Haku it did help. I mean, I guess technically you could say he did actually win the fight because Haku did give up because he realized that Naruto, after getting the QB Chakra amp, was just too much for him to handle. Well, there's also the fact that, and this is something again I think a lot of people forget, is that Haku himself said that he had to, that by the time that, or when it got to the point where Naruto used, the QB Chakra to amp himself up, he had already used up most of his chakra. Like when he created the, I forget the ice, I think it's called the ice mirror jutsu, I think, if I remember correctly. But he himself said that he had to end the fight quickly because because the fight went on for a little bit longer, he had basically used up a lot of his chakra, which, if you remember, that's one of the drawbacks for using Ice Style or Sharingan or Magna Release or any Kekkei is that for all the advantages it gives you, there's like a couple of very big disadvantages, which is that it uses up way too much of your chakra. And it's one of the reasons why you have to like use it sparingly, or you have to use it as a trump card, because like I said, it uses up a lot of chakra. And as we see in the Naruto series, when you use an ability too much, eventually your opponent is going to figure out its weakness and they're going to use it against you. So that's why you want to be smart when it comes to using whatever your abilities are. You can't just spam them, because then people are going to, like I said, figure out how the ability works. They're going to figure out a weakness and they're going to figure out a plan to basically counter it and then win the fight against you. And there's also, the huge chakra drain. So we do have to take that into account when Naruto won the fight. And yeah, I mean, other than that, I think pretty much most of his fights he did win against Gaara. Sorry, I forgot about that. And against Kimimaru, he didn't win. He brought it up against Sasuke. He didn't win at the end of part one. And what else did he bring up? Most of the fights that he went into, he didn't actually end up winning.
Two people he beats on account of getting help from the fox, and he fights them.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, he brings it up. Neji and Gaara. Those are the only two characters he actually won against in the in part one, at least, when he used the Nine Tails chakra.
After spending a month training for the Chunin exams, or in other words, training to beat both of them. To offer an example of the sort of progress he could have made in that time, Sasuke came back from his training with the Chidori and speed on par with Lee's. So it's not like Naruto even got this red chakra ability for free. Its opportunity cost was pretty steep, and he wasn't even able to use it consistently. He was actually so bad at it that the last person he ever used it against was Gaara. Even in both of these fights, the power wasn't easily accessible. The only reason he could use it against Neji was because he had all of his chakra points closed, and the only reason he could use it against Gaara was because he was completely out of chakra after creating like 500 plus clones and summoning Gamabunta. And the thing is, it's not like the Nine Tails chakra was the thing that made the difference in his fight against Gaara. Naruto summoning Gamabunta was obviously a lot more decisive here, and by the way, that almost didn't even work. If he hadn't been lucky enough to summon Gamabunta's kid earlier in the fight by accident, Naruto wouldn't have gotten any help. He would have just been left there to die. Something else I'd like to point out is that even after beating both of them, Naruto didn't get promoted to Chunin anyways. In other words, winning these two fights, the only two fights he actually won before the time skip because he was the Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tailed Fox, didn't tangibly benefit him in any way. His ninja career didn't advance at all as a result of these victories. Now that I've gone over these two exceptions, let's talk about all of the other examples I listed, starting with Haku. So, okay, admittedly, Naruto did start beating Haku up pretty bad as soon as the Nine Tails entered the equation, but Naruto's performance here was completely irrelevant. Right after he got beaten up by Naruto, Haku left that fight to intercept the killing blow aimed at Zabuza and die from Kakashi's attack, not Naruto's. Then the Nine Tails played no role in the entire rest of the battle on the bridge. It may as well have not even shown up at all. I'm not about to let anyone say the Nine Tails saved Naruto's life here either, because Haku left like immediately after Naruto powered up. And also, Haku didn't kill Sasuke. He was holding back against the two of them because, as Zabuza says, Haku's gentle or whatever.
Yeah, that's something that I think, again, a lot of people forget, is that Haku wasn't even going all out in the fight against Naruto and Sasuke, because like what Zabuza told Kakashi, like Haku inherently is not a fighter. He doesn't enjoy fighting. He doesn't enjoy killing. But he also happened to be born with this incredible gift and insane talent when it comes to being a shinobi. And because of that, obviously, he was pushed into that direction, even though he didn't even have any interest in being that.
He also met Naruto earlier that day and liked him a lot. There's no version of events where Haku kills Naruto here. It just wasn't going to happen. Against Orochimaru in the Forest of Death, Naruto lost. Against Kimimaro, Naruto lost. Against Sasuke, Naruto lost. Against Deidara, Naruto hit him a couple times, but Deidara was able to escape with substitution anyway. And Naruto had to take advantage of an opening Kakashi created for him by sniping Deidara's arm off with a portal to another dimension, and he was backed up by Guy's entire team and Sakura and Chio, and they still couldn't kill Deidara. Against Orochimaru, the second time they fought, the Tenchi Bridge, not in the Forest of Death, he used so much of the Nine Tails power that he completely blacked out, almost killed Sakura by accident, and still got told that he was nothing compared to Sasuke. So then he used even more of the Nine Tails power, and that still wasn't enough to kill a terminally ill Orochimaru who couldn't use his arms. In this situation,
that's again, it's always kind of funny, like looking back at this moment in particular, especially when you look at like all the just power that Naruto was just throwing out in that fight. And only to still be told that, you're good, but you're still not on his level, okay? And the fact that, what he brought up right here, the fact that, like, Naruto still couldn't even kill Orochimaru, who was, terminally ill, who was basically reaching the point where he has to, like, switch another body, which whenever that happens, Orochimaru is always weakened. And if you remember, that's why Sasuke attacked him when he did, because he knew that this was a prime opportunity that he was probably never going to get again. So he had to jump at that moment. And so it's like Naruto wasn't even fighting like a 100% healthy Orochimaru. And yet Orochimaru still not only survived, he looked at Naruto and said, compared to Sasuke, you ain't shit. So that's something that, again, I feel like a lot of people just don't bring up enough when it comes to what Naruto does here in the Tenchi Bridge arc.
And he was more of a problem than an asset because Orochimaru and Kabuto weren't even trying to kill Yamato, Naruto, Sakura, and Sai. They say multiple times that they want to keep these Leaf Ninja alive so that they can kill other members of the Akatsuki. In fact, Kabuto tries to heal Sakura here as a gesture of good faith, and he's not even able to do it properly because of the way that Naruto injured her. So it's not like Naruto even saved anybody's lives here. He didn't do anything productive. All he accomplished was putting the mission in jeopardy and putting the lives of his teammates in jeopardy. Something else I'd like to point out, because I think it's pretty funny, is that this is the second time in a row that Naruto fights someone who can't use either of their arms, gets massively powered up by the Nine Tails, and has backup on his side, and still fails to kill his armless, weakened opponent. Like in Shippuden, his record when fighting under these very specific, very favorable circumstances is somehow 0-2. Anyway, against Kakuzu, he uses like a smidge, I guess, but I'm not sure how much that really affected things. I think it's reasonable to attribute his victory here more to the S-rank forbidden jutsu that blew Kakuzu up like a nuclear bomb than to the red eyes he showed for a second when he used the jutsu for the first time.
And you also have to remember that Kakuzu at that point had already spent basically like the entire day fighting against Kakashi, and not to mention he already had like two of his hearts destroyed first by Kakashi, the other one by Shikamaru, and then one of them was destroyed by Naruto's Rasen Shuriken, and the last one was destroyed by Kakashi. So by the time Naruto got there, like Kakuzu had, you could say, already basically like used up most of his power. So Naruto really just fought against someone who had, already been like not even at 100%, who had been fighting for such a long time. So that's something, again, I think you do need to take into consideration when it comes to like Naruto's like performance throughout the series.
Finally, there's pain. So the only reason Naruto even had to tap into the Nine Tails chakra here at all is because it, as in the Nine Tails itself, made it impossible for him to gather nature energy for Sage Mode mid-combat.
True.
I also think it's worth pointing out here that the only reason he was even fighting pain at all is because he was the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, which also, as I just said, gave him a unique disadvantage in this fight that no one else but him would have had with the whole Sage Mode thing. Now in this fight, which again only happened because Naruto was the host of the Nine Tails, he had to use everything. He almost let the Nine Tails kill him and take over his body because that's how much he wanted to beat Pain, and because he had to if he didn't want to lose. And that was still barely enough for him to scrape by with the win. But you know what?
That's also true. And again, I know I've said this before, but I think it does bear repeating. Naruto lost the fight against Pain, even after all the training that he did to master Sage Mode, Naruto still lost the fight at the end. That's something I think a lot of people don't bring up when it comes to this conversation, where Naruto is like, he didn't have things as easy as I think a lot of people think that he did.
Just to be agreeable, I'll count this as a clean Ninetales related win for Naruto. So throughout the entire series, discounting fights where Naruto is taking advantage of training he put himself through to tap into the Ninetales power, the thing only makes the difference between winning and losing a single time. And it's against the guy who only wanted to fight him because the Ninetales was inside him in the first place. After this, of course, Naruto trains with another Jinchuriki and in the process gains access to Ninetales chakra mode, which allows him to tap into large amounts of the Fox's chakra at will. As part of this process, Naruto has to fight the Ninetales and beat it under the threat of death if he loses. And it goes without saying he couldn't use any Ninetales chakra in this fight,
that's...
of course. He had to win using skills he developed throughout his career, independent of Kurama's presence or influence. This isn't something he had to do either. He could have just not taken the challenge, but he did anyway. And so, considering the nature of the training and all the negative ways being a Jinchuriki affected him earlier in his life, I think it's fair to say that Naruto earned the power he obtained at the Waterfall of Truth. And, even after this, it's not like things get easy for Naruto. He struggles against the Raikage. He's nearly killed by Nagato. He's unable to beat the third Raikage with Ninetales chakra mode, and actually switches over to Sage mode. He's unable to do anything.
Yeah, switches over to Sage mode because Sage mode has better sensory capabilities than Kurama chakra mode. And yeah, like he brings it up, like Naruto again, that fight against Itachi and Nagato. Like if Itachi hadn't planted the crow inside of Naruto, before his fight against Sasuke. And I guess he's also lucky that Naruto didn't meet up with Sasuke after he gained the EMS before he met Itachi, because if that happened, then the crow would have used Kotomatsukami and Shisui's power would have been shut off for another 10 years. So when they meet Itachi, none of that would have happened. Nagato would have ripped Naruto's soul out of his body, and that would have been it. It would have been game over. So, yeah, again, like he didn't. It actually is really kind of funny. Like when you go back and you look at it, and you look at Naruto's like record of fights throughout the series, like the guy didn't really win a lot of fights. Like he barely won any of them.
To Obito without help from Kakashi, so on and so forth. And this is all without mentioning that to tap into all of Kurama's power, Naruto had to become his friend, keeping in mind that he got the shitty, evil, cynical half of the Ninetales sealed in him, and that no one before him had ever managed to befriend the Ninetales, even without this extra disadvantage. But I'll talk more about that later. Now, up until this point, at least concerning the Ninetales stuff, I've only talked about the literal on-screen events. Let's focus on the subtext for a bit. So, all the way back in Chapter 1, when Naruto finds out he's the Jinchuriki of the Ninetales, he's not told that it's been sealed inside him, or whatever. What Mizuki says is that Naruto is the Nine-Tailed Fox. Later in the chapter, Iruka speaks with Mizuki and has to make a distinction between Naruto and the Ninetales. The idea here obviously being that he sees them as two separate entities, while most of the other villagers see the two as one and the same. There are also other times, particularly early on in the series, where characters speak about Naruto like this, referring to him as the Ninetales rather than as its host. It still persists further into the series, but mostly with characters who don't see Naruto or other Jinchuriki as anything other than the beasts they're carrying. The members of the Akatsuki, for example. Now, some of you are probably wondering where I'm going with this, and, well, one of Naruto's unique disadvantages is that he has to overcome being perceived this way by the people around him. Once he learns that he's carrying the Ninetales, it's clearly of at least some importance to him that people are able to see the distinction between the two of them. Knowing this, let's re-examine all of the examples that we took a look at earlier, all the times he's ever been powered up by the Ninetales throughout the series. In situations where he leans on the power as a crutch, like where the chakra is kind of given to him and he doesn't consciously tap into it, you'll notice a few common trends. He typically succumbs to whatever he's feeling in the moment. This is often rage. He always begins to resemble the Ninetales. He loses his sense of self either partially or completely, and he almost always fights with the intent to kill. Finally, and this next one is really, important, he
Okay.
never wins. Obviously, I
Yeah,
don't know what
that's-
Kishimoto was thinking when he wrote the series, but I'd be willing to bet that all of this is intentional. Whenever Naruto finds himself in a position where a power-up from the Nine Tails might seem helpful, it's meant to be an easy but ultimately flawed and incomplete solution to whatever
Yeah,
problem
it's-
he's currently facing. We'll typically see him interact directly with the fox inside his head before he gets the power-up, and these scenes are almost always like super blatantly constructed to look like he's making a deal with the devil. In these instances, he definitely gets more powerful, but it comes at a cost. This strength,
Always,
the
yeah.
purely
That's-
physical, tangible kind, does technically move him closer towards
Again, like this is basically what I mean when I say that, you know, in a lot of part 1 of Naruto and in a lot of, you know, part 2 of Naruto, when Naruto uses the power of the Nine Tails, when he uses Kurama's power, he you know, it always came at a cost and it was never good. That's something, again, I think a lot of people forget, because I think, again, most people just remember Naruto when, you know, him and Kurama worked together and using, throwing like multiple, like 60 billion Rasengans or, 60 billion Rasen Shurikens, or, and then later on when he had, you know, Six Path Sage mode along with, you know, Kyuubi Chakra mode, and he was throwing like lava Rasen Shurikens, wind Rasen Shurikens, magnet Rasen Shurikens, and so on and so forth. Like they remember that stuff, but they don't really remember a lot of the stuff that came before, where like using Kurama's power came with a cost. Like they don't really remember that, at least I don't think, just based on like some of the conversations that I see online.
his goal of becoming Hokage, but at the cost of him getting to be him, Naruto. In these moments, the two of them stop being separate entities, and it starts to look like Mizuki was right. Naruto is the nine-tailed fox that destroyed the Leaf Village. This is obviously something that Naruto doesn't want, something he's aiming to avoid. It's not real progress. These are cheap, unearned power-ups, but the series is aware of this and usually even features some kind of underlying narrative reason why Naruto's decision to lean on the Nine Tails in a given moment is wrong. For example, the first time something like this happens, Naruto's fighting Haku, and they're engaged in a heated conversation about the nature of ninja and whether or not they're just tools, means to an end meant to fight and die for their village or the person that hired them. As we know, towards the end of the arc, Naruto is able to make Zabuza realize that this isn't true, and that he and Haku should see themselves and each other as human beings, rather than as mindless killing machines. This is why Naruto fails to kill Haku in his fit of rage, because that's not the correct solution to the problem here. If Naruto were to kill Haku here, he'd be perpetuating the system that led to the entire conflict in the first place, and ultimately nothing would change. The pointlessness of Haku's death is highlighted by the fact that Haku dies to save Zabuza, only for Zabuza to die like immediately afterwards.
Yeah,
the series is
that's-
saying that these characters killing each other doesn't help any of them, just people like Gato, and that Naruto was wrong for giving in to the urge to do so. What Naruto does manage to accomplish is a lot more meaningful than killing Haku would have been. He's able to reach Zabuza by appealing to his humanity, which, saves Zabuza's soul and also gets him to help them deal with Gato and his army of thugs. When he sees what he believes is Sasuke's death, Naruto has a moment of weakness where he's overcome by rage and hatred. His conviction is put to the
Also-
test, but
I just want to point something out. I always, going back and reading the manga and then remembering the anime, you notice just how much the anime changed from what actually happens in the manga, specifically like how much it's censored, what actually happened in the manga. Like, look here, look at Sasuke's got like needles throughout his throat, throughout his hands, on his back. Like, some of this we do see, but just look at he's coughing up blood, he's bleeding everywhere. Yeah, the anime just censored all of that. And here's the thing, I get it. There's obviously TV, standards that they have to meet in order to, air a specific, any show, especially one that's, aimed mostly at children. But that didn't really make a lot of sense because the manga itself was aimed at children. It's not like this was aimed at 18-year-olds. So I never understood, again, why this is okay, but on a TV show, it's not. And here's the thing, if they ever do decide to go back and reanimate redo the Naruto anime, how One Piece is getting, that treatment with its anime, I still have no idea when that's supposed to come out, by the way. I haven't really heard anything about that. But if it ever does happen, I hope they actually stay true to the manga and they don't censor these things. A genuine, true adaptation of the Naruto manga would be absolutely amazing. And, obviously, there were some things that the anime did add that I did kind of like, because it did make it a bit more like, or it took advantage of it being like a visual medium, you know, or no, sorry, this is a visual. What I mean by that is like it took advantage of it being a TV show, an animation, as opposed to being a comic book. You know what I mean? So I hope they find like a good balance between the anime and the manga, where it stays faithful to the manga and also does what the Naruto anime did best, like how they added to some of the fights in the series. So I do hope that does happen. But yeah, just wanted to talk about that for a bit, because again, like every time I go back and look at the manga, or I see an image of the Naruto manga, it makes me realize just how much the anime censored it, how much the anime changed things.
His emotions superseded. He stops seeing Haku as a human being and starts to see him as a target. It's only when he breaks Haku's mask and sees his face that he's reminded of exactly what he was trying to say earlier. His opponent isn't a faceless killing machine, but a human being. And Naruto realizes that if he, in a fit of rage, kills Haku in retaliation for Sasuke's death, he's no better than Haku, Zabuza, or most importantly, the Nine Tails. Again, succumbing to the allure of the Nine Tails' power here is supposed to be a moment of weakness, a mistake on Naruto's part, not indicative of any growth or progress or whatever. The idea that the power of the Nine Tails comes at the expense of Naruto's humanity and sense of self is reinforced in the following arc by Gaara. Gaara's obviously supposed to be a foil to Naruto, and I don't think I need to explain how. Let's take a look at the fight these two have at the arc's climax and at the groundwork the story lays out for it. Just about everyone who knows Gaara, and even people who meet him for the first time in this arc, they're scared of him pretty much whenever they're around him, and it gets a lot worse, like a lot worse, as soon as he starts transforming into Shukaku. Tamari's scared of her brother, but she's paralyzed with fear by Shukaku. Kankuro's also scared of his brother, but he even says himself that the way he feels about Shukaku is on a completely different level. He says that the Leaf Ninja won't know true fear until they see Gaara transform. So on and so forth. These aren't the only two characters who express this kind of sentiment about Gaara, but you get the point by now, right? Now with this fear, there obviously comes some obedience and respect. Tamari and Kankuro spend the entire arc doing whatever they can to keep Gaara happy because they're afraid that he might kill them if he gets upset. Many Sand Ninja also speak highly of Gaara. Plenty of them even refer to him as the village's secret weapon. A reputation like this is pretty difficult to develop. Most seasoned adult ninja don't even get this kind of respect from their peers. But for Gaara, while it comes easily, it also comes at a steep price. He's powerful and people take him seriously, but he's also seen as a monster, and that's because he allows himself to be a monster. Like Naruto, when Gaara draws on his tailed beast's power, he begins to resemble it. But to highlight why doing so is a bad thing, the series makes Gaara's transformation look grotesque and terrifying. Like when Naruto does his Berserk Nine Tails thing, he looks kind of scary, I guess, but Gaara takes it to a different level. Now,
he basically turns into a monster, and that's something that I always like found kind of interesting. Like whenever the other tailed beasts do a partial transformation of parts of their body into to resemble the Biju that's inside of them, but with Naruto, that's never been the case. Like it's always just like pure chakra. You know what I mean? And I always wondered like why that's the case. Like why was it different for like Gaara and for Naruto? Like why was it so different between the two?
In order to reach the height of his power, Gaara has to give control of his body to Shukaku, completely surrender his autonomy, and the idea here is that the power on its own isn't worth anything. Gaara gets stronger, but in the process literally stops being himself. These beasts can be used as a shortcut to power, but that's not the same as a shortcut to success, at least not Naruto's idea of success. People would probably have ended up respecting and fearing Naruto if he leaned on the power of the Nine Tails the same way Gaara leaned on the power of Shukaku, but they wouldn't have loved and admired him the way he would need them to in order for him to become Hokage. This is why Gaara has to overcome Shukaku's influence, and more importantly, grow out of the belief that he should live solely to get stronger at any cost, to experience any personal growth, and eventually to become Kazekage. Like I said, as far as this is concerned, Shukaku and Kurama are narrative devices meant to represent shortcuts to power, but not necessarily to success, fulfillment, or happiness. Even though Naruto uses the power of the Nine Tails to defeat Gaara, he does so on his own terms and doesn't allow it to influence him beyond making him stronger. Naruto has to prove to Gaara and to himself himself that the general public perception of them is wrong, that they're more than the beasts they carry inside of them. If he had entered the same state of mindless bloodlust as he had against Haku and Orochimaru, he probably would have gotten a bigger power boost than what was provided to him by tapping into the chakra himself, but he probably would have been too aggressive and out of his own mind to save Gamakichi, or maybe even use the summoning jutsu in the first place. Speaking of the summoning jutsu, this is another way that Naruto and Gaara are shown to be distinct.
What's interesting, what he pointed out right there, like Gaara would have probably done a lot better if he use the power on his own, which actually is true, because remember, it is confirmed that the Jinchuriki is always stronger than the Bija themselves. So if Gaara had fully used Shukaku's power on his own while still, maintaining his own identity instead of handing it over to Shukaku, then I don't know, like I feel like the fight wouldn't have gone as well for Naruto. Because, at the time, Naruto had a little bit of access to Kurama's power, as opposed to Gaara, who would have had full access to all of Shukaku's power. So, yeah, I don't know. Again, like it is always, again, interesting to go back and look at these fights knowing what we know now.
In this fight. While Gaara has easy, on-demand access to Shukaku's power, the two of them exist in a perpetual power struggle with one another. They both hate each other and only work together when and because they feel like they have to, and most of Gaara's problems stem from this dynamic. Naruto and Kurama have a similar relationship at this point in the series, so while Naruto could have responded to Gaara's overwhelming power by doing the same thing and letting the Nine Tails take him over, he recognizes in the moment that this isn't the correct approach. He opts for the riskier and more difficult, but ultimately correct decision to summon Gamabunta and works with him to defeat Shukaku. What I feel like their combined transformation into the Nine Tails is supposed to represent, like as a visual metaphor, is the idea that Naruto was able to achieve the same thing Gaara did, power on a frankly ridiculous scale, without sacrificing his autonomy the same way Gaara had to, and without literally becoming the Nine Tails and proving Mizuki and others right for seeing him that way. Obviously, the Nine Tails is way stronger than Gamabunta, so this isn't literally true, but that's what I believe the subtext is here. It's just too brilliant an analogy to have been an accident, and I can't really think of anything else the story could have meant to convey by setting up a random problem that was solved by Naruto and Gamabunta transforming into the Nine Tails here. So let's quickly recap. Naruto is able to get through to Gaara by winning the fight on his own terms, proving that he was able to find strength without making the same sacrifices for that strength that Gaara had been up to that point. The main takeaway from the fight is supposed to be that power isn't paramount. Not only is seeking it at all costs self-destructive and at odds with achieving other meaningful forms of personal growth, but Gaara's approach to it turns out isn't the only efficient way to obtain power, and in fact isn't the most efficient way to do it either. That's why he lost to Naruto. That's also why whenever we see Gaara again, he doesn't use the Shukaku transformation. It provides cheap and easy power in the short term, but comes at the cost of pretty much everything else Gaara wants, and stops him from reaching the height of his potential as a shinobi anyway. All this stuff gets reinforced by future events, like really blatantly actually. See, what's interesting is that while Naruto teaches Gaara this lesson, Gaara's the only one who actually really internalizes it. Naruto's pretty good about resisting the urge to go berserk the way he did against Haku. Usually. He goes the whole entire next arc after this without using the Nine Tails power at all. The next time we see him do it, he's fighting Kimimaro, and the reason he succumbs to the Fox's influence is because of how emotional the events of the Sasuke retrieval arc make him. Like I said, the series uses Gaara to convey that this is supposed to be a bad thing,
it didn't help that Kimimaro basically told Naruto what Orochimaru's plan for Sasuke actually was, which would have meant Sasuke being gone permanently. And of course, Naruto just didn't want that to happen because he actually, cares about Sasuke and he's a friend of his, so.
It's not really subtle about it at all. Naruto just gets annihilated by Kimimaro here. Can't do anything to him at all. Then Lee shows up and does better, but still can't win.
A little bit
then
better.
Gaara shows up. Unlike Naruto, he's calm, collected, and most importantly, has beaten the temptation to let Shukaku take him over. And he actually starts winning. Granted, Kimimaro does almost win the fight in the end, but he has to transform twice to do it. He barely even had to try in his base form to invalidate everything Naruto threw at him. The difference between the two characters is highlighted, again, about as blatantly as it could be at the beginning of Shippuden. By completely conquering Shukaku's influence, Gaara's reached the level of Kazekage. This is the equivalent of Naruto's dream. But as we continue to see, Naruto still hasn't overcome the influence of the Nine.
Interestingly enough, it was when Naruto essentially conquered it and then started to be more like himself. That's when people started to acknowledge him, which of course helped lead to people wanting him to eventually, become Hokage.
tails, and as a result is still really far from becoming Hokage. This is about as obvious as the series possibly could have made it that the Nine Tails is supposed to be more of an obstacle than an advantage. Naruto has to overcome this obstacle to get what he wants, the position of Hokage, the same way Gaara had to overcome something similar to become Kazekage. Anyway, let's go back to the Sasuke retrieval arc for a second. I already talked about how the series shows that Naruto using the chakra as a crutch is a bad thing with the Kimimaro fight, but I skipped over Naruto versus Sasuke to stay on topic with the whole Gaara thing. As I already mentioned, Naruto lost his first fight with Sasuke in the Final Valley, and like all the other fights I've talked about so far, there's some subtext here, a narrative reason for Naruto's defeat beyond the fact that he's physically weaker than Sasuke here. What you'll notice if you rewatch the fight is that Naruto starts by trying to talk Sasuke out of his decision to train with Orochimaru and really only fights in self-defense. When this fails though, he falls back on the power of the Nine Tails and decides to force Sasuke to come back with him. Naruto's problem here is his inability and honestly unwillingness to understand Sasuke and the belief that he can solve the
I do appreciate the little bit of editing he did here to help, get it past, the copyright bots or whatever, because that is definitely something that, by the way, if you're new to the channel and you're wondering like, why do I have the filters on top of the video? It's because of that. It's to help with copyright, because in the past, while I was able to get away with it for the most part, there are some videos that have been blocked from being uploaded because there was some anime footage that was included and that got caught by the copyright bots. So basically by putting the filter on top of it, it basically stops it. Like it's not a permanent, solution. Like there are some times where even this isn't enough to stop the copyright bot from picking it up. But it definitely does help. Like I've had less problems when I do this than in the past when I didn't do it. So yeah, again, if you're new to the channel and you're wondering why I'm doing this, that's why. And I do like that he did that a little bit here where he is obscuring it a little bit, or at least he's lowered the opacity of the footage so that it's, it again definitely counts as edited footage, although there was a lot of other footage that wasn't that, so I am definitely wondering whether that's going to get hit. But again, hopefully the filters that I put on top of it should be enough.
The problem by just overpowering him. If Naruto had won here, it honestly would have just validated Sasuke's belief that he needed to train with Orochimaru. He would have found a way out of the village eventually, and Naruto would have just been sent back to square one. This is why Sasuke shows Naruto some respect, but pays no mind to anything he says.
And it's also interesting because if you look at the next fight, which again, I'm wondering, at least I think, he's going to talk about this later on. But if you look at the next fight, like their next fight starts differently than how this one started. This one started because like Naruto essentially initiated the fight against him. In the next one, Sasuke was the one who initiated the fight against Naruto. And Sasuke lost that one, but he won this one because Sasuke, remember, originally he didn't want to fight Naruto. He just told Naruto, look, just forget about me. Just go back home. Just leave me alone. Like I've got my own thing I want to go do. And that's it. Like he just turned around and he was just going to walk away. But then Naruto initiated the fight. And then Sasuke realized that, okay, I'm not going to be able to go unless I stop this guy. And, then he, remembered what Itachi said and tried to, go through with it to awaken. But then I think I mentioned this before, but I think in that fight, he realized that he couldn't do it ultimately. And I think a big part of it is because what he says later on, where he doesn't want to basically earn power the same way his brother did, because he fundamentally rejects everything Itachi was about, at least at the time before he figured out, the whole truth and everything. And at the same time, I think it's because he realized deep down he doesn't want to kill Naruto. I've said this before and I will continue to say it, even if people try to deny it, but Sasuke never actually wanted to kill Naruto. He always knew deep down he doesn't want that, which I think, in my opinion, at least for me, stopped him from fully going through with it. Like deep down, he never wanted to actually do that.
Power without personal growth or any real conviction behind it. Naruto's desire to prove his physical strength to Sasuke is actually what costs him the fight here too. If he'd gone for a serious attack rather than scratching at Sasuke's headband, he could have at least secured a draw. The idea that his failure here will somehow impede his progress toward becoming Hokage.
I don't really know whether that would have worked. I think because remember, Sasuke at the time had the Sharingan. So if Naruto really was going for, let's say, Sasuke's head and not just the headband, I think Sasuke would have seen it coming and would have moved out of the way at least enough to, lessen the impact of his hit, and still would have, allowed him to, like put full force into the attack that he, hit Naruto with. At least that's what I think. Like, again, because he does have the Sharingan, which does allow you to, see any attacks coming. And I think Sasuke did see where the attack was going, which is why he probably didn't bother dodging. And also because, Sasuke did, like, he was, like, where he hit Naruto was perfect to essentially knock him out. Now, again, he was going for the killing blow, but at the last minute changed it to a fist as opposed to a jab, because if he didn't do that, he would have pierced through Naruto's heart, and that's it. It would have been game over.
Kage is one the series echoes the next time Naruto meets Sasuke. He straight up says so himself. And now, before anybody tries to say that this point doesn't stand because Naruto could have used more Nine Tails chakra in one or whatever, as soon as the cloak goes from one tail to two tails, he completely loses control of himself and tries to kill his comrades. He almost kills Kakashi doing this, actually. So he would have killed Sasuke here if he'd done that. I mean, pretty much every single one of the next few times he does something like this, he ends up almost killing one of his teammates. It should be self-explanatory why this is bad. So that brings us to his fight with Pain. First of all, here Naruto makes the same mistake as Gaara and adopts an at-all-costs mindset concerning his victory. He concedes control of himself to the Nine Tails and nearly dies because of this mistake. It's a perfect parallel to how Gaara fought back in part 1. On top of that, when Naruto gives in and lets Kurama take him over, he's basically admitting defeat in the ideological battle he's having with Nagato, the same way he did with Haku and with Sasuke. So even in the one fight Naruto wins partially off the back of help from the Nine Tails, the series recognizes and directly addresses why this is a problem, and everything he accomplished using its chakra isn't indicative of any real growth. Yamato even says all this to Naruto himself. The Nine Tails power, it's something that's worth respecting, but it's not really your power, Naruto. Even if we ignore all the super apparent risks, like the harm the Nine Tails can and has caused to Naruto and those around him whenever he uses its power, there's a problem with the principle of leaning on the Nine Tails the way Naruto tended to in the first half of the series. Like I've been saying, it stands in the way of his ability to achieve real, meaningful growth as a ninja. That wasn't...
Which is interesting because, like, you could even say that was something that Naruto kind of ended up doing later on in the story, where he, like, basically realized that he, unfortunately, in order to go up against the threats that were coming, he kind of needed Kurama's power. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean that Naruto neglected his own training, but you could argue that he sort of ended up relying on it a little bit too much, because, like, obviously, like, Kurama's power gives you a huge advantage. And the thing is, even sometimes if you have something like that, even without meaning to, you can end up relying on it a little bit too much, that it does make you wonder, like, okay, now that you don't have it, what, what are you going to do now that you don't have that, incredibly, useful, source of power that you always had. Now that you didn't have your partner who's been with you for, so many years, who's been helping you out, what are you going to do now? You don't have him to help you out anymore. You don't have his power to rely on. And one thing that I will say, like, this is something that did kind of disappoint me about Boruto Part 1, among the other things, is that we never got to see Naruto after he lost Kurama. That's something I wish we could have gotten, and who knows, maybe we will at some point in the story. I don't know. Although, if I'm being honest, I highly doubt that. But that's something that I wish we could have seen. Same thing with with Sasuke. We did get that sort of flashback where we saw him in it, him and Boruto in the fight against Code, but at the same time, like, it was barely anything. We didn't really get to see it. I just wish we could have gotten something after that. So I don't know. Yeah, that's just. But yeah, I mean, what he's saying right here is absolutely true. Like, it's even Yamato was telling him, like, you can't fully depend on this power, because at the end of the day, it's not your power. Like, yeah, if you keep relying on it, you're really only going to hurt yourself at the end of the day. Even later on, which, even when he was able to work with Kurama and he was able to use more of him and use it properly, because you could say, again, he ended up relying on it a bit too much, it only ended up hurting Naruto, to where I would argue Naruto probably could have gotten a lot stronger, or like base Naruto without Kurama would probably be a lot stronger, so that even if he loses Kurama, it's not really, I mean, yeah, it's a big deal, you know, and it is a big source of power, but it's not to the point where it leaves him completely useless.
Naruto fighting Deidara. That wasn't Naruto fighting Orochimaru. That wasn't Naruto fighting Pain. The series only begins to treat his use of the Nine Tails chakra as legitimate from the time of his training with B at the Waterfall of Truth onward. And now hopefully we can all agree that the fruits of this training, that first Nine Tails chakra mode form, were well earned. Naruto deserved this. In order to get it, he had to beat the Nine Tails without relying on the Nine Tails at all. In this fight, he uses shadow clones. He uses the Rasengan. He uses the Rasen Shuriken. He uses Sage Mode. All stuff he learned without the help of the Nine Tails, without a Kekkei Genkai, or without a genetic predisposition towards any of it of any kind. And the thing is, this was step one. He still wasn't done yet. Not even close, actually. Even after.
Well, I would say he did get a little bit of help from Kushina. We can't forget that he did definitely get a little bit of help from Kushina. So I feel like, okay, he, again, not to take away from his accomplishment, but he didn't do it completely alone. I will say that. Now, admittedly, it's been a minute, so I don't remember exactly how much Kushina helped, but she definitely did help. So it's not 100% on his own.
After putting his life on the line in a death match against the Nine Tails and winning, Naruto didn't get any of the cool abilities that other Jinchuriki had. Couldn't transform into the Nine Tails, and he couldn't fire a tailed beast bomb. And on top of that, the form that he did get was just a band-aid ability, something he was gonna have to work with for the time being because it wasn't and couldn't have been his end goal. Using this form perpetually put Naruto's life at risk, which is something he was gonna have to address eventually. The only way around all these problems was for Naruto to befriend the Nine Tails, something that no one before him had ever managed to do or even come close to managing to do. And the thing is, in case some of you forgot, this is not the normal Nine Tails Naruto's carrying inside of him. This was the super asshole evil half. So let's all quit pretending that Naruto had any of this Nine Tails stuff handed to him on a silver platter. Hopefully I've convinced you by now that he did. Next, let's talk about his teachers. People like to say
that is absolutely incorrect. Again, like I feel like it once again goes back to a lot of people remembering Naruto, the times when Naruto and Kurama worked together, but they don't remember a lot of what happened before that. You know what I mean? Like, to me, again, it's interesting because, like, I don't get how people can forget the stuff that comes before the stuff that they like, because that's such an integral part of the story. Like, the reason why the stuff that you like works so well is because of the stuff that came before. So I don't know. To me, it feels weird.
Say that because Naruto was the son of the fourth Hokage and he was the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, he had access to a series of elite tutors that accelerated his growth in a way that gave him an unfair advantage over his peers. At first glance, it's hard to deny that he was taught by some pretty distinguished ninja, but like with the Nine Tails, people often exaggerate how much this did to help Naruto. I'm gonna repeat here that he had no one to teach him anything for the first 12 years of his life. 12. Everyone else in the series at least had parents to consult for their training and could probably seek help from other adults in the village. Naruto had to rely entirely on the academy, which was focusing on things he was naturally predisposed to be bad at or straight up incapable of practically applying. This is enough to offset a few good teachers. Now let's actually look at the teachers, Kakashi, Jiraiya, and B. Kakashi teaches Naruto nothing in part 1 but how to walk up trees, and Naruto gets more help from Sakura in this respect than he does from legendary copy ninja Kakashi. Jiraiya is admittedly a seemingly valuable teacher to have and teaches Naruto a lot of stuff in part 1, chiefly the summoning jutsu and the Rasengan, but Naruto does half the work for the Rasengan on his own, and after this, Jiraiya teaches him like nothing at all. Naruto learns a big Rasengan and how to dispel genjutsu during the time skip. That's it. Then B is the only person in the whole series who could have taught Naruto how
I will say this when it comes to his teachers. Yes, it's true. Naruto at the beginning didn't have anyone, and you know, a lot of the others, you know, did have people to, you know, help him, or did have people to help them, you know, parents or I guess friends of their parents to help them out. But one thing I will say, like, you know, the idea that Naruto being the son of the Hokage, I don't think it's completely useless, or the son of the fourth Hokage, excuse me, wasn't 100% useless. I think it definitely did play a part in it. So I don't think we can just completely dismiss that, because I do think it definitely did play a part in, Naruto getting some of the teachers that he did. Now I don't think that applies to Kakashi, because originally Kakashi, he I don't again, I don't think he originally had any intentions of actually training Naruto. I think that only happened because of Hiruzen, because again, Hiruzen did promise to Kushina and the others that he was going to take care of Naruto, which, as we already established, he did a shit job of doing that. So yeah, Kakashi does have a connection to Minato, who is Naruto's father, but I don't. At least again, correct me if I'm wrong, because from what I remember, Kakashi never insisted on training Naruto, if I remember correctly. Like, I think he only ended up training Naruto and Sasuke and Sakura, a Team 7, because he was basically tasked to do that by Hiruzen. And Hiruzen, who does have Hiruzen himself didn't really have Hiruzen did teach Jiraiya, who went on to teach Minato. So technically he does have a connection there, but I don't think it's like that strong of a connection, if I remember correctly. I mean, it's there, but I don't think it was enough to say that it basically led to Naruto essentially having all of these like amazing, teachers. Now, but again, he does have them, and that definitely is an advantage that a lot of people, other people in the village or other people in the world, definitely didn't have, and probably never would have had they not, unless they were Naruto Uzumaki. So again, I don't think we can completely dismiss how him being who he is led to him having a lot of amazing teachers.
How to control the Nine Tails, and even then the process was complicated by how unique Naruto's abilities were as a Jinchuriki. I also think that getting help from B is something offset by the fact that Naruto was, at the time of his training, being targeted by two of, if not the two most powerful living ninja in the world. Plus, if these two extremely powerful ninja managed to capture him, it meant the end of the world. So there is a lot of pressure on him to succeed. I think it's also offset by the fact that in order to fully take advantage of this training, Naruto had to figure out a lot of things on his own and befriend Kurama, and B couldn't help him with any of this. Even
Oh yeah, the evil half of Kurama.
if none of that stuff was true, let's consider a few things. First of all, it's not really that difficult to find someone who's super powerful and willing to teach you in this universe. Sakura just walked up to the Hokage, also a Sannin like Jiraiya, and asked to become her student. And it worked. The best taijutsu user of all time, as said by Madara Uchiha himself, sought out Lee and made him his protege. Everyone with a secret clan jutsu had special instruction from their clan that no one else got, and like anyone could have approached Kakashi for the kind of help that Naruto got. He probably would have said yes to them the same way Asuma did when Naruto asked him for help. Most of Naruto's core jutsu are either self-taught or things he specially adapted to his skill set anyway. Shadow Clone, Rasengan, Rasen Shuriken, and all the nine.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Okay, yeah, that's true for some of the, the people in the Leaf Village. I will give him that, absolutely. But again, some of the people, okay, for example, with Jiraiya, I don't think it would work with Jiraiya the same way it did for Tsunade. Number one, Tsunade, I think, had more of an interest in taking on, or it was easier for her to assume that she would take on a student than with Jiraiya, because Jiraiya was always outside the village on missions for, the Leaf Village. So I don't know. I feel like it would be a little bit more difficult for him because, the type of missions that he was going on were very dangerous, ones that only he could go on. So I highly doubt that. And I think, again, the only reason why he took Naruto with him was because he knew that Naruto was being targeted by the Akatsuki, and he knew he had to make sure that Naruto was, was actually prepared for it. So I think that that's why he made an exception, but I don't think that he would just accept anyone as a student, at least in my opinion. I don't think so. Or actually, no, I don't think he would have. No.
Tails chakra mode specific stuff. He either partially or completely developed all of these things on his own with an immense amount of effort, and if he received any instruction at all, at most he got a helping hand from one or more teachers. His determination to improve and belief that he was capable of improving did a lot more for him than people are willing to admit, and likewise, people overblow how much these three did for Naruto massively. Let's talk about his parents next. We won't have to spend very long on this because it's the least impactful thing we've talked about so far and are going to talk about by a pretty wide margin. The only genetic advantage Naruto has is the same larger than average chakra pool as most other members of the Uzumaki clan, which is made both redundant and irrelevant by the time he masters the Nine Tails chakra. All this really did for him, practically speaking, is make it possible for him to use the multi-shadow clone jutsu, which Iruka points out he worked himself to death to learn anyway. Now, some of you are probably thinking that what I just said is ridiculous. Surely being the son of the 4th Hokage and a particularly blessed member of the Uzumaki clan means Naruto should be predisposed to being a good ninja, right?
Think,
no, that's not how that works. If you're good at something, your kid isn't going to be automatically good at that thing. Sometimes that sort of thing happens. Some famous singers are the children of other famous singers, so on and so forth, but it's not so common that we can say it's a guarantee. And usually,
so for example, like look at Sasuke, for example. Since he is Naruto's rival, like with Sasuke, multiple people throughout the series keep talking about the insane talent that he was born with, but that doesn't mean that Sasuke didn't put in the effort to train to get to where he eventually ended up, to where he ended up being. Like, it's because of all the work that he put in. Now, did he have advantages? Absolutely. Did he have, genetic advantages like he did, with the Sharingan? And due to being an Uchiha, he was naturally gifted at using ninjutsu, or at least it means that ninjutsu comes easier to him than it would a lot of people. But that doesn't mean that he didn't put in the work to accomplish it. Like, having all that talent means nothing if you don't put in the work to actually become good at something. Like, you have to actually put in the work to do it. And again, I feel like people saying that kind of invalidate the work that people put in to actually become good. Just saying that, oh, you only got this far because of your talent or whatever. It's like, no, like, they put in a lot of work, and you can't just you can't just dismiss that.
Usually this happens as a result of the child receiving some kind of help or instruction from the parent in question, which Naruto obviously didn't. If they'd actually survived and had taught Naruto the same way other ninja have been shown instructing their children, then we could talk about privilege as far as this is concerned. But that's not what happened. The closest Naruto comes to benefiting from who his parents are is when he meets each of them respectively inside his mind as a part of the sealing jutsu Minato used to make Naruto the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails.
And what's interesting what he said right there about parents and how, them being there to help you, because again, like, if we look at Sasuke, for example, you could say that Sasuke was in the same position, or well, actually not exactly the same position, but basically in a position where he basically, even though he did have parents, he still didn't really get a lot of help from them, because he essentially, because he was, essentially the younger brother of Itachi, someone who was exceptionally gifted, and because a lot of the focus was put on him, Sasuke, unfortunately, as a result, got ignored by, his own parents. And even when because remember, we saw in the flashback, he kept asking his brother, hey, could you help train me? Could you teach me? But Itachi was always busy, he was always busy with something else, either with schoolwork, or then he was busy with missions, and then he was busy with the Anbu, and being a like a sort of secret agent for the Uchiha, and so on and so forth. And he was also an agent for the Leaf Village to spy on the Uchiha. And yes, and his dad, obviously being the leader of the Uchiha clan itself, obviously had a lot of responsibilities. And his mom was busy obviously taking care of the family. And so Sasuke, even though he had all that talent, he had to basically put in a lot of work to develop it on his own. But then, interestingly enough, just like with Naruto, look what happened the second someone actually took a moment to focus on his talent. When his dad took him to the lake that they went to teach him the fireball jutsu, he didn't get it at first, and then I think it was a couple of days, maybe a week later, he went back to his dad and said, hey, could you come with me? I want to show you, the progress that I made. And then his dad immediately just dismissed it because, like, no, I mean, it's only been a little bit. I mean, there's no way you learned it. And he showed him, and I think if I remember correctly, it was actually bigger than the one his dad made. And he did that in just a week, with just 1 week of practice, and all the time that he put in to train to use the ability. And then look at how it look at the results of all that effort. to the point where even his dad looked at him like, wait a minute, you did this in just 1 week of training, just 1 week? You already added a change in chakra nature to your, arsenal. Like that's, if you remember, that's something that even most adults have trouble doing. So again, look what happens when you have people actually putting the time and effort to help cultivate their talents. They shine. They actually show you how amazing they actually are. They actually do have talent. They do have skills, which again goes back to what he pointed out at the beginning of the video, that one thing that I think a lot of people miss about, with Naruto and what it tells you is that, if you just find the thing, if you just take the time to find the thing that people are actually good at, you'll be surprised just how much they can actually do instead of just focusing on the things that they can't do. And again, we see the same thing with Naruto, where, once he actually starts getting proper instruction, even when it's not really the best, because Naruto puts in the effort, he shines.
Both of them actually offer Naruto some pretty meaningful, tangible help when they...
So, sorry, just real quick, we're already over the 1 hour mark, so I'm going to try and keep my comments to a minimum to, again, not make this video way too long.
Minato stops the seal from breaking, which saves Naruto's life, and Kushina uses her chains to partially suppress the Nine Tails and help Naruto defeat it. But think about this for just a second. What part of this requires Naruto to be related to either of them? Minato almost definitely would have programmed the sealing jutsu the same way whether he'd sealed the Nine Tails in his own kit or not. The whole point of dying and giving half the fox to Naruto was to keep the Nine Tails under the leaf's control. So no matter who became its Jinchuriki, Minato had a vested interest in helping that person the same way he helped Naruto. As its previous Jinchuriki, Kushina wouldn't have minded offering help to a future host of the Nine Tails either. His respective meetings with Minato and Kushina would have almost definitely happened whether he'd been their kid or not. Now, before anyone tries to fight me on the genetics thing I was talking about a second ago, it's stated with no ambiguity that Naruto's parents didn't pass any special gifts on to him. And it wasn't just any Joe Schmo that said this either. This came from the mouth of the Sage of Six Paths. This isn't a retcon or whatever either. The series has always been pretty consistent regarding the whole Naruto has no natural talent thing. Orochimaru makes this point for me all the time, actually. Pretty much every time he interacts with Naruto, Orochimaru finds an opportunity to say something about how he's just not as good as Sasuke is. He witnesses the power of the Nine Tails on 2 separate occasions and never once considers stealing Naruto's body instead of Sasuke's. He doesn't even think Naruto, with all his supposed genetic gifts and the power of the Nine Tails, is worth kidnapping to have as a backup in case he can't take Sasuke's body. When she first meets him, Tsunade doesn't seem to think much of Naruto either, and she's floored when she sees him perform the Rasengan for the first time. It's actually revealed later that Tsunade knows who his parents are too. Here's the most plain example, though. During the three-way deadlock, Jiraiya and Orochimaru speak briefly about Naruto. In this conversation, Orochimaru says, to quote him directly, "My ability to recognize talent is unrivaled. In my eyes, that kid is nothing but mediocre." Jiraiya, one of the only people in the series who actually knows that Naruto is the son of the 4th Hokage, doesn't respond by saying something like, well, he actually does have talent, you just don't know him, or whatever. He agrees with Orochimaru and explains that this is exactly why he wants to train Naruto. He's trained geniuses before and finds it boring. Orochimaru assumes that this is because Jiraiya wants a student he sees himself in, one who reminds him of a younger Jiraiya, who, by the way, is implied over and over was a dunce in his youth the same way Naruto was, and eventually became one of the most powerful ninja in the world. Now, you can try to rationalize this all you want. Maybe Jiraiya was just going along with whatever Orochimaru was saying to keep him from realizing that Naruto was the son of the 4th Hokage, or whatever. But I think it's easier and more honest to just, take the characters at their word here. First, because in this case, the point Jiraiya is making is actually one of the themes of the arc, so it's...
Okay, so the thing is, yes, that is true. Sometimes you do have to take the words of the characters, at face value, but at the same time, you sometimes, you have to learn to, understand the subtext. Sometimes, if you know a character has the, has a tendency to sometimes mean something else when they say certain things. That's when you have to keep that in mind whenever they speak. Are you actually, just speaking plainly, or are you maybe saying something else? So I think sometimes you do have to take that into consideration. But yeah, a lot of times you should just take what the characters say at face value. Sometimes it's the writer basically telling you through the characters, this is what's going on.
more likely than not that he's telling the truth, and then especially because there are plenty of other examples of this sort of thing happening throughout the series, including, but not limited to, the one I mentioned earlier with the Sage of Six Paths. Speaking of the Sage of Six Paths, let's move on to the last supposed source of Naruto's privilege, the fact that he's a reincarnation of Ashura Otsutsuki, one of the two sons of the Sage of Six Paths. Now, at first glance, I'll admit this seems pretty damning. It's kind of Chosen One-esque, or it at least appears that way, and what you'll often see people point back to is Naruto's conversation with Neji about fate during the Chunin exams. It's very common for someone making the points that I'm arguing against right now to say that Neji was right all along. But this only proves, if anything, the opposite. The first thing we need to establish about this whole thing is that it isn't some kind of prophetic cosmic plot armor that ensures Naruto's survival or success or whatever. When he learns that he's Ashura reincarnated, he's dead. Same with Sasuke. Hagoromo also tells him that he, as in, like, Hagoromo himself, can't do anything to affect the outside world, and that Naruto and Sasuke's survival depends on other people. This means that if not for the help that they each received from Minato and Kabuto respectively, plus some other people like Sakura and Karin, they would have died here with or without Hagoromo. Before anyone tries to say this, no, it wasn't guaranteed by fate or whatever that Naruto and Sasuke would be saved either. That doesn't make any sense. Hagoromo would have just said so if that were the case, and it's been shown that that's not how this works anyway. Hashirama, for example, the previous reincarnation of Ashura, was killed in a war he spent most of his tenure as Hokage trying to prevent, and he died like 80 years or something before Madara did, without really doing anything to stop Madara or save the world. Hashirama failed, even despite the fact that he was a reincarnation of the same person Naruto was. And Madara would have failed to get anywhere if he didn't have Zetsu helping him out. And that's the next thing. With Zetsu running around setting up his 1,000-year Kaguya revival plan or whatever, it's hard to feel like Indra and Ashura periodically reincarnating meaningfully affected the events of the series. In fact, the subtext of the fight with Kaguya is that the future can't be dictated by any one person. That's what Naruto seeks to prove to Zetsu by defeating Kaguya, that history is made by all who take part in it, not by a select few architects. The only thing that people reincarnated from the souls of Indra and Ashura are said to be destined for is to fight each other to the death forever. Hagoromo, you know, their dad, and also someone who's seen like every major historical event throughout the entire series timeline, described it as a ceaseless conflict, something that was never, ever, ever, ever going to end. Kakashi also alludes to something like this when he picks Naruto up from the final valley after the
this moment right here, it does make me wonder, like, was this something that Kishimoto was basically foreshadowing, like, even all the way back here, like all the way back then when this chapter came out? Like, was this something that he was basically telling us that, like, what, like this is what's going to end up happening? Like, it's eventually going to be revealed, like, who Naruto and Sasuke are. Like, I don't, again, like, maybe not. I don't know. I don't remember, like, reading about any interviews or reading any interviews, or hearing about any interviews where he's admitted this. Like, yeah, this was something that I always had planned. I don't know. But it is interesting, again, like, going back and reading the series, and you see just how much was, like, essentially set up. And, you know, then way later on, it finally gets paid off. It's interesting. Like, this is like one thing that I do love about going back to either watch, shows, or, going back to reread manga from the beginning and knowing what we know, and, knowing what you know about the series later on. You see, like, you pick up things that you didn't pick up, before, or maybe you've forgotten, when you first read the chapter when it got released.
Fight at the end of part 1. And the weight of this conflict falls onto Naruto's shoulders. Naruto has to succeed where every person before him has failed in a battle against what he's told is fate itself. Ashura failed to reach a peaceful resolution with Indra, Hashirama failed to do the same with Madara, and the same was true of every pair of reincarnates in between. But Naruto succeeded here. There are two ways to interpret this. The first is that fate doesn't actually exist in the world of Naruto, and that being Ashura reincarnated had no bearing on Naruto's life or achievements, or that fate does exist, but Naruto had to succeed in spite of it. In either case, this whole Neji was right business is nonsense. If anything, this is just another obstacle unique to Naruto that he had to overcome on his journey to become Hokage. Let's put a pin in this for a second and talk more about that last part. This is a key aspect of Naruto's character throughout the series, and it's something I often see people ignore. Naruto expects a lot of himself, more than most people do, and more than most people in his position often would. His relationship with Sasuke is a good example of this. He goes above and beyond to be a good friend to Sasuke and actually makes saving him a personal requirement before he considers himself worthy of becoming Hokage. To anyone but Naruto, Sasuke would have looked like a lost cause. In fact, he did to everyone.
Yeah, a lot of people
By the
consider
end of
him to be
Shippuden,
a lost
practically
cause.
everyone important to him had told him to let Sasuke go because they didn't think he could be saved. It's not Naruto's dedication to Sasuke specifically that I want to highlight here, but rather his unwavering resolve and commitment to doing what he believes is right in general. When people tell Naruto he needs to be realistic and that Sasuke is beyond saving, he doesn't see pragmatism, but sees weakness instead. To Naruto, saving Sasuke is the right thing to do, so he just has to do it, plain and simple, and he approaches every problem like this. If he sees the possibility of success somewhere, no matter how faint it is, he'll pursue it, and this is why he's so successful. He expects the best of himself at all times and doesn't stop until he achieves this. This extends beyond the scope of his skills as a ninja too. No matter how difficult something is and how unlikely his desired outcome is, if Naruto sees an opportunity to do the right thing or to obtain personal growth, he'll pursue it at all costs. This is highlighted time and time again as the single most prominent catalyst for his growth. The Shadow Clone Jutsu, the Rasengan, the Rasen Shuriken, Sage Mode, and the Tailed Beast Bomb are all things he's given reason to believe he can't learn. He failed a graduation exam that required him to perform the Clone Jutsu 3 times in a row and still decided to put his everything into learning the multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu when he took the Scroll of Sealing. There's an extremely good chance he failed many times before pulling it off, because when Iruka found him, Naruto hadn't even started practicing the second jutsu listed on the scroll. He literally couldn't perform the Rasengan properly when he first learned it, because he wasn't talented enough, and this is a weakness he was unable to overcome for years. Rather than accept this though, because Naruto works backward from the conclusion that he will succeed, he found a workaround and mastered the jutsu anyway, despite the fact that, like I said, he wasn't talented enough to perform it normally. The same thing happened with the Rasen Shuriken. Combining a nature transformation with the Rasengan was said to be impossible, and Naruto couldn't do it normally, but because of how committed he was, he found a workaround that took advantage of skills he already had. The same thing happened with Sage Mode. Naruto found out he couldn't gather nature energy mid-combat because of the Nine Tails, but refused to quit and discovered a workaround for this. Viewed individually, these are all stories of an underdog succeeding despite all odds, and it's never because he's the son of the 4th Hokage or the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, or even because he's Ashura reborn. It's because he refuses to take no for an answer because he expects better than that of himself. Like I said, this doesn't just apply to his approach to learning ninjutsu. Naruto never settles for less than the best outcome he thinks he can achieve no matter what he's doing. He never goes back on his word, that whole thing. Now, this is actually really important, so important that it's arguably the thematic foundation of the entire series.
Okay.
I'm not going to discuss this in as much detail as I could, but one of the concepts explored by the series' first arc, The Land of Waves, is the potential impact of an individual's core philosophy and ideals. Zabuza basically tries to tell Naruto that having greater ambitions beyond the scope of the individual is a privilege not afforded to shinobi. All they should be concerned with is being powerful enough to carry out the orders given to them by people with the resources and influence necessary to make their ambitions a reality. In this case, for example, Tazuna and Gato are using ninja as proxies in an ideological battle to see which of their ambitions come to fruition. And all that really matters is which side has the better ninja. What's funny is many people who engage with the series make the mistake of viewing it this way too. People will treat Naruto saving the world like it was a total layup just because he was powerful, which completely ignores all of the non-combat situations he had to successfully navigate to do so. Naruto comes to embody Zabuza and Haku's ideal vision of a ninja when he leans on Kurama's power and nearly kills Haku during the battle on the bridge. And like I said during the Nine-Tails section of the video, Naruto's not supposed to look admirable here. He even catches that what he's doing is wrong, that he shouldn't strive to be an emotionless killer focused primarily on his mission objective. This battle with Haku is pretty much completely irrelevant since Kakashi ends up killing him anyway. Where Naruto really makes a difference is in his ideological confrontation with Zabuza, where he forces Zabuza to
Again, yeah, that's something again that I think a lot of people miss about this moment is that the actual fight here is between like everyone's ideology here. Like Naruto doesn't see the world the way Zabuza does, and for a minute, you could say he almost does, but then just manages to catch himself and he manages to stop himself from seeing the world the same way Zabuza does, and also manages to change Zabuza's mind or make him basically see what you could say that Zabuza already knew, but was just trying to pretend wasn't actually the case.
reconsider the way he treated Haku and his generally cynical worldview. Here, Naruto goes well above and beyond what's expected of him. We're even explicitly told that this is outside the scope of his mission objective, but because what Zabuza's been doing doesn't sit right with him, he feels compelled to do something anyway. The series is full of moments like these, and it's typically through these moments that Naruto most prominently affects the world around him. If Naruto hadn't gotten through to Zabuza, or Inari and the rest of the residents of the Land of Waves for that matter, he and the rest of Team 7 probably wouldn't have been able to take out Gato and the rest of his thugs when they showed up to the bridge. To provide some examples from elsewhere in the series, when he fights Neji and Gaara respectively, Naruto tries and succeeds to appeal to their humanity and save them from their cynicism the same way he did with Zabuza and Haku, which he didn't have to do, but it's a good thing for him and everybody else that he did given later events. For even more examples, he steps in to save Tsunade against a Jonin with a jutsu he hasn't even mastered yet. He drops everything to save Gaara at the start of Shippuden. He doesn't give in to his rage and speaks to Pain rather than killing him in an emotional fit. He takes it upon himself to enter the Fourth Great Ninja War and fights like every reanimation at once. He goes the extra mile when fighting Obito and fights to save the tailed beasts. He appeals to Obito's humanity the same way he did with Pain, and in the process forgives Obito for killing his parents and like ruining his entire life. And of course, like I was saying earlier, Naruto never gives up on Sasuke. Much of Naruto's success,
if I'm being honest, I still kind of wish the whole Obito thing would have happened a little bit, differently. Like, again, I get it, that was part of his character, but I don't know. Like, it would have been nice to like see like Naruto at least show like a little bit of anger for what what Obito did. I mean, I get that they had the whole thing at the waterfall, and him basically like accepting his anger, or like accepting that his anger is a part of him and everything, but still, like, it just, I don't know, it's just that never really sat right with me. Like, I mean, like, I'm sorry, but just what Obito did, again, I get what they were going for, but it's still like, no, I don't know. I would have liked something, just something, anything.
can be traced back to his resolve, force of personality, and thorough commitment to doing what he believes is right. Even if we stay within close proximity of the examples I just gave, Haku opts not to kill him because of a prior interaction they have where Naruto shows how genuine of a kid he is. Neji saves Hinata's life during the battle against Obito and Madara. Gaara, as a result of his interaction with Naruto, grows into a person who's able to act as the linchpin that holds the allied shinobi forces together when it threatens to fall apart. Tsunade takes the position of 5th Hokage, saves Sasuke and Kakashi, and teaches Sakura medical ninjutsu and her own unique brand of taijutsu, which, by the way, leads to Sakura helping save Naruto's life after Madara rips the Nine Tails out of him, and also leads to her landing a decisive blow against Kaguya. Naruto's decision to hash things out with Pain saves many Leaf Ninja, including Kakashi, without whom defeating Obito and Kaguya would have been nearly impossible. His patience with the Nine Tails and compassion for the other tailed beasts leads him to unlock Kurama's full power and eventually the abilities of the other Biju. His willingness to forgive Obito leads Obito to help fight both Madara and Kaguya, and in both cases, he saves Naruto's life. Finally, of course, without Sasuke, he wouldn't have been able to undo the infinite Tsukuyomi, and if we're counting some of the canon movies, later in the last, the leaf would have been destroyed by a giant meteor if Sasuke hadn't been there to blow it up. None of this stuff has anything to do with Naruto's genes or any gifts bestowed upon him, and as I discussed earlier, this can't be due to the fact that he was reincarnated from Ashura's soul. Ashura couldn't reach Indra, and Hashirama gave up on Madara. Naruto and Sasuke were, if anything, fated to battle to the death, but Naruto's compassion and resolve were strong enough to overcome this. In no respect were any of his accomplishments handed to him. They were all hard-earned and came as a result of Naruto consistently giving 100% no matter what he's doing and refusing to compromise on any of his principles. Even the Yang power he got from Hagoromo came with the acknowledgement that he'd proven he deserved it, and with it, he also inherited the responsibility of saving the world and ending the, up until then, ceaseless cycle of violence between Indra and Ashura. Naruto had to answer for the failures of countless others before him, including people.
I said it before and I'll say it again. I still don't like this. I still don't like the power-ups that they got from Hagoromo. I mean, I've said this before, but like, to me, it's still like, it just, I don't know, like, it just felt like it, what's the word I'm looking for? It just feels so, I don't know, like, I don't like it. Like, it's, I mean, I don't like power that's just handed to people. You know what I mean? Like, to me, I like the everything that we've seen before, where like this, they like, train and bust their ass to learn skills and increase their power that they naturally have. I don't like when someone just shows up and just puts a hand on him. It's like, okay, here you go. Here's more power. Even though, like what he said, like he proved in a way that he, earned it. Like I still, like, I don't know. I don't like it. I'm going to be honest, still to this day, I don't like it. Same thing with, it was Sasuke and what he got. It's just, okay. I'm back now. Sorry, I had to go take care of something, and I can't remember if I was talking about something before I paused. So we're just gonna go ahead and continue. We're already closer to the end, so we're just gonna go ahead and finish out the video.
Who lived and died before he was even born. In fact, even including the Sage of Six Paths, and he rose to the challenge without a single complaint. He just did it, right? He took responsibility for it and successfully solved all these problems created by people that weren't him, tons of people he hadn't even met before in his life, and a lot of the people who failed to fix things that became Naruto's responsibility were better equipped to deal with them than he was. I'll leave you guys with the following question. If Hashirama, who is also a reincarnate of Ashura, tamed all 9-tailed beasts, not just the Nine Tails, was born with significantly better gifts than Naruto, had the political influence that comes with being Hokage and the leader of his clan, and created the framework for the modern shinobi system, couldn't bring about world peace, how's it fair for us to expect Naruto, an orphan outcast with almost none of what Hashirama had, to succeed where he failed?
Okay, so yeah, I mean that is that's the video. And look, I mean, again, I'll try to keep this brief because again, I just want to wrap the video because we're already we're at an hour and a half, and I don't even know if I'm gonna actually edit this video at all. I think I might do like a little bit of post processing as I usually do with the audio to just make it sound a little bit better. But other than that, I'm just gonna go ahead and upload the whole thing. Oh, sorry, I hit the mic. But yeah, I mean, again, here's the thing. I think I did say this once before. I think in another video. But I do think that again, there are there are points to be made, I think, on both sides. I think that, both sides do tend to exaggerate a little bit, as usually is the case with a lot of discussions. I don't think that personally, I don't think that Naruto was 100% an underdog, because at the end of the day, we do have to acknowledge that he did have some advantages. He did have some advantages that a lot of others just didn't. And even though, again, he also had a lot of things to overcome, he definitely also did have a lot of things helping him in his goals, like whatever they are. So again, while I do think that there are, again, points to be made on both sides, but for me personally, again, I don't agree with the extremes of either one. I don't think that Naruto was 100% not an underdog. And I also don't agree that Naruto was 100% an underdog. I do think, again, he did have some things going for him that definitely did help in his, endeavors. So anyway, yeah, those are just basically my thoughts. I think I gave, most of them throughout the video. But like I said, I just wanted to keep this brief so I could just go ahead and let you guys go. But anyway, if you enjoyed the video, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, guys. And if you really enjoyed it, I really would appreciate it if you leave a like and, share this video out there. Please subscribe if you are new, and make sure to ring the bell if you want to be notified whenever I post a new video or whenever I go live. We do do weekly live streams here. At least that's my plan for 2025. I did mention that in the previous live stream. So if you want to join in on those live streams, make sure to hit the bell icon, because that way you are notified whenever they happen. Again, I try to do at least one live stream a week. So if you want to join, like I said, make sure to have the bell icon switched to on. That way you know whenever the live streams happen. And if you have any recommendations, guys, if there's a video out there you want me to react to and give my thoughts on, just let me know about them in the comment section down below, and I will get to them. So just let me know about them. And also, please, guys, check out Swag's video. If you haven't watched it, make sure you go watch it. Go support him. Watch the actual video. Don't just watch my reaction to it. And, go show him some support. Subscribe, like his videos, share them out there. I don't remember if he has a Patreon or not, but if he has, you can definitely go and, subscribe to it, or go join the Patreon. Again, I don't remember if he has one or not. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go. We are going to be watching another one. It's actually this one that you see right here on screen. We are going to be watching this one, so look forward to that one, and I'm going to react to it, give my thoughts on it, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go. Thank you guys so much again for joining me, and I hope I'll see you guys for my next video. Bye for now.